This is Rethik, your biology subject matter expert from MemoNeet, and once again, welcome to the biology series. So, in the previous videos, we have discussed about the basic concepts of morphology of flowering plants. We have gone through root system, then types, then leaf, and also their types based on their arrangement and all, right? So later on, we have also gone through what inflorescence, what is it, and what are the properties. In this video, we will be concentrating on the flower, parts of flower and how they are arranged. Moving to the flower, dear students. What is flower? Typically, flower has, in most way, flower refers to the major thing is reproductive part of the higher order of plants, right? So in most of the higher plants, what happens? The only way of sexual reproduction, flower, only way of sexual reproduction is through the flower. That is the part which is flower, right? So flower where reproduction could be either there are many pollinations are there, right? Which we have already discussed in the previous classes also. So typically there are four different kinds of oral arrangements successively on the swollen end of the stalk. So for example, if there is a stalk, right? So successively at that end of the stalk, we will be seeing a part of flower. So that different kinds of oral arrangement is actually called as thalamus. Now, these are calyx, corolla, and androecium and gynoecium. So calyx and corolla, they are unnecessary organs, while androecium and gynoecium, they are the reproductive organs. So if you remember the plant kingdom, I have already we have discussed what are androecium and what are gynoecium. So they are actually what? They are the reproductive organ, right? Then, in some flowers, such as if we take lily as an example, what happens? This calyx and corolla, they are not distinct and are termed as perianth. So, what happens? The calyx and corolla, they are not distinct in some of the flowers like lily. So, those distinct and separated, you cannot distinguish them. So, they are termed as perianth. So, when a flower has both androecium and gynoecium, so we normally call them as bisexual flowers. Okay, a flower having either, and what is androecium and gynoecium? It's something like a flower will be having either any stamen or only carpels, right? So it is called as unisexual flower. So it should either have only it should have a stamen or it should have a carpel. Then we can subject it as what? Unisexual. So if it has both male and female reproductive organ, so together, then we normally subject them as bisexual flowers. So when a flower can be divided into two equal half, that is radial half. Okay. So in any radial plane passing through the center, for example, if this is a flower, and when you pass a plane through the center, it can divide that into two equal radial half. So then that is actually called as actinomorphic. Okay. So that kind of division is actually called as what? Actinomorphic. So you will be seeing that kind of radial division in mustard, datura, and chili plant, chili flower. So where it can divide into if a plane is passed into two similar half is nothing but so both has to be like simultaneously same. Okay, similar half only in one particular ventral plane. One particular ventral plane means only one time. Okay, then it is actually called as zygomorphic. Like if you see a pea plant and bean plant, cassia plants, what happen? You will be seeing this zygomorphic kind of division. Then a flower is asymmetrical or irregular. If the flower is irregular, what happens? It cannot be divided into two similar halves, right? By any vertical plane passing through the center. So what happens? Whenever a vertical plane is passed through a center, it cannot divide the flower into two equal halves because it is irregularly arranged. The flower is irregularly arranged. Okay, so what it can be say? So what happens as in can you will be seeing this kind of thing. Okay, so we normally refer that as asymmetrical, arrangement. Now, a flower may be trimerous or tetramerous. Trimerous is nothing but the floral appendages, So they are a multiple of trimerous is nothing but three, and tetramerous is nothing but four, and pentamerous is nothing but five. They're floral arrangement, students. So what happens when the floral appendages are in multiple of three, four, or five, respectively? We normally call them as tetramerous, or trimerous is like three, then tetramerous and pentamerous. So flower with the backs, that is nothing but if the flower is having a reduced leaf are being found basically. So if it is a flower, right? So what happens? A reduced leaf will be found in the basic, right? Base, right? Base of what? That is pedicel. So we normally call that as bracteae, and those without bracts, right? They are called as ebracteate. So, based on the position of the calyx, corolla, and androecium and respective of the ovary on thalamus, what happens? The flower can be described as what? Hypogynous. So, what is hypogynous flower? What happens in the hypogynous flower is, see, this is an hypogynous flower, okay? So, in hypogynous flower, the gym, what happens here is gynoecium occupy the highest position while the other parts are situated in the below position. So the ovary in such flower is said to be what? Superior. So ovaries, right? They are very superior in such flower, like in mustard, China rose, brinjal. You will be seeing this kind of arrangement. Then we have another type which is called as what it is called uh, gynoecium. So if gynoecium is actually situated in the center and other part of the flowers, they're located on the rim. So rim means in surrounding of the thalamus, almost at the same level. See, can you observe they are being located almost at the same level? So that thing, we normally called as, what do we call? Gynous. So B and C, you can see that almost they are located. That is the flower, the gynoecium, which is situated at the center here, and the other parts of the flower are located surrounding it, rim to it of the thalamus, and almost they are of what? Same level. So those we normally called as perigynous. Okay. So that kind of thing, arrangement, we normally call what? Perigynous. So here what happens? The ovary here is said to be half inferior. That means it is not completely, superior. It is half inferior. Like in rose and plum and other, you will be seeing this kind of arrangement. The last one is, that is the D that you are watching. So it is epigynous. So what is this epigynous, my dears? The margin of thalamus grows upward, okay, and enclosed by the ovary completely and getting fused with it. So can you observe the fused kind of structure here? So what happens? The other part of the flowers, they normally arise above the ovary. If it is ovary, here either it is arising below the ovary, so it is equivalent to ovary, but this is arising above the ovary now, okay, above the ovary. Hence the ovary is said to be here inferior, as in flower of guava or cucumber and the ray such as sunflower plants and all. You will see this kind of arrangement. Clear? Coming to the parts of flower. So in parts of flower, see, if this is a flower, we have pedicel, as I have been discussed previous. Then we have calyx, then corolla, gynoecium, and androecium. So have you got what is gynoecium and androecium? That's a reproductive organ, male and female, anyhow. So coming to the very first one, that is calyx. this part region is actually called as calyx. So it is the outermost whorl of the flower, and members are actually called as sepals. So they are called as what? Sepals. Generally, what kind of color you will be seeing? So it is green in color, right? And leaf-like structure, and it also acts as a protector. That is, it protects the flower during the bud stage. So when the flower is in bud stage, right, it normally acts as a protector. It protects the flower in its bud stage. Then it may be gamosepalous. That is, sepals, they might be united, okay, or polysepalous. That is nothing but the sepals, they might be free. So united in sense they are attached to one to another and they are fused, or else they are separated independent, something like that. So this is all about the calyx. Next, moving on, we have what? Corolla. So corolla, next to the calyx, we'll be seeing the corolla. So this is the corolla. It is what? They are the petals, right? They are the petals. Usually, when we see petals, right, they are bright in color. They're colorful. This is very important. And what is the major function? Attraction, as it shows inflorescence. So it attracts the insects for the pollination. Okay. And may also be either fused. That is, they may also be gamo. So since we are talking about the petals, right? So it is said to be gamopetalous or polypetalous. They might be either petals might be united or petals might be free. The shape and color, coming to the shape and color of this corolla, so they vary depending on which plant it is. Okay, so they might be tubular in shape, they even might be bell in shape, then funnel shaped or wheel shaped structure petals can be observed. So next coming topic, it is all about the aestivation. What is the aestivation? See, the mode of arrangement of the sepals or petals in the floral bud, which represent to the other members of the same oral, is known as aestivation. So that means it has to represent the sepals and petals, they have to represent, that is the overall the floral bud will be representing the same as to the other member of the same whole is actually called as aestivation. So the main type of aestivation are valvate, then twisted, imbrasicate, and vexillary. So what happens? What are they? We will go in deeper. So when the sepals, as you can see here, so almost when you look at them in an outer way, you will find them very similar. But if you go in deeper, you will understand it. Say like this figure is actually what? Valvate. So in valvate, what happens when sepals or petals that you're seeing, this or this you're seeing, is oral, just touch one another at a margin. So what happens? So when you're seeing this is actually oral formula, my dears. Okay. So when you see the oral formula, what you can see here, it is somewhat touching one another at a margin, right? Without overlapping. Overlapping means so they are not overlapping on another. Instead, that touching to one another. Okay, just they are very nearer to one another. Okay, without overlapping. So then we can call those type of arrangement as valvate. This is all about sepals and petals. Now in twisted, what happens? Say like this is twisting. In twisted, what happens? So if one margin of the appendages overlap that of the next one. So can you see here? So this, okay, I will complete it. So this is overlapped with this, and this is overlapped to this is overlapped to this, and this one is overlapped to this. So in China, rose plants, flowers and all, or lady's finger, cotton plant, you'll see this type of arrangement where the sepals and petals they're overlapped to each other, their floral arrangement. So then we call that arrangement as twisted. Next one we have is imbricate. Imbricate. So in imbricates, what happens? If the margin of the sepals or petals, okay, as you can see here, yes. So what happens if the margins of the sepals or petals overlap one another, but not in any particular direction? That means when compared to this, right, when compared to the twisted, so it is also overlapping, but not in a particular direction, but randomly. Okay. So then we normal that estivation is actually called as imbricate. Clear? The last one we have regarding estivation is vexillary. So in vexillary, what happens? So say like in a pea or bee plants or flowers, so there are five petals, right? So and in this five petals, the largest overlap, that is the largest, as you can see here, what happens here is the overlaps the two lateral petals, that is wings. So the largest one you are watching, right? So they are going to overlap the two lateral petals, which in turn overlap the smallest one. So this is going to overlap the smallest one, right? Key. This kind of estivation is known as maxillary estivation. So this is all about the estivation. Now we need to understand even their parts, right? That is, the next we have is androecium and gynoecium. So what is androecium then? In general, they belong to a reproductive. They do belong. They are the reproductive organ. That's fine. So androecium is what it consists. It actually compresses stamen. So each stamen, which represents what? Stamen is a male reproductive organ, right? Stamen is actually a male reproductive organ. Consist of what? It consists of stalk or filaments and anther. So in each anther is usually bilobed, or each lobe has two chambered, which is the pollen sac. Same which we had discussed in the sexual reproduction in flowering plant when I was explaining you about anther structure, stamen structure, the androecium part. So the pollen grains are produced where? They are obviously produced in pollen sac, and the sterile stamen is called as stamenoids. Very important. So stamen of flower may be united with other members such as petals and among themselves. So when stamen are attached to the petals, they are epipetalous as we see in brinjal, or epiphyllous when attached to the periperal as in the flower of the lily. So the stamen in the flower may either remain free or they may be united in various degree. Then the stamen may be united into one bunch or one bundle, which we normally called as monoadelphous, as in China rose, or they can also be as two bundles like diadelphous, as in the pea plant, or into many bundles like more than two bundles, as in most of the citric flowers we see them. Then they may be even their length also might vary. So that is, there may be a variation in the length of the filament within a flower, as in the mustard flowers you can see them, or salvia flowers you can see them. Then we have a gynoecium, which is female reproductive part of the flower and made up of one or more carpels. So the carpels consist of three parts, namely one is stigma, style, and ovary, right? Ovary is the enlarged part, basal part, or which lies elongated tube, the style. Then the style connects the ovary to the stigma, right? So the style, right, it connects ovary to the stigma. Then the stigma is usually present in the tip of the region. So where what happens? It acts as a receptive surface for the pollen grains. Pollen grains comes and that is the place where it normally receives the pollen grain. And each ovary bears one or more ovules attached to the flattened cushion like placenta. Then when more than one carpel is present, there may be free and are called as apocarpus. If there are only more than one is there, then it we normally in lotus and rose and all. So we normally called as apocarpus. They are termed syncarpus. When carpus are fused, we normally call them as syncarpus. Say like in mustard and tomato, we see the syncarpus. Then after fertilization, the ovules developed into what? They develop into seeds and ovary matures into fruits, right? The ovary part matures into fruits and ovular parts develop into seed. So fruit part, whatever that is developed, that is a stored nutrient which helps the seed for its germination. Coming to the placenta, which is inside the ovary. So the arrangement of ovules within the ovary is actually called as what? Placenta or placentation. The placentation are of different types, namely. So here you can see this. This is marginal. So this one will be axial. Then this one is parietal. And this is actually the basal. Okay. Is this basal or we cannot, sorry, not basal. We can call as free central as they're located central, right? So they're free central. And this is the basal. Central and free central. And this is basal. So what happens if I'm talking about the marginal? If I'm talking about the marginal, in marginal placentation, the placenta forms a ridge along the ventral, the stair of the ovary, and the ovaries are born on this rigid forms two rows as in pea plant. So you can see in the pea plant how they are, right? So in this way, marginal, in one marginal way, the placenta is formed. So if you see in the axial, right? So when a placenta is axial, what happens? The ovaries are attached to it in a multilocular ovary. So multilocular ovary in sense, if this is the ovary, the placenta is attached as multilocular here, like this. Okay, they are multilocular. So this is how in axial placentation you will see. Like example, China rose, then the tomato, lemon, and all. So then we have is parietal placentation. So in parietal placentation, the ovary is developed on the inner wall of the ovary. So here it has been developed. The ovules, right, they are developed in the on the inner walls of the ovary. So as you can see, they have been developed on the inner walls of the ovary. Then the placenta is said to be what? Ovary, right? So they are called as, or even we can call them as periperal or periperal part. So the ovary is one chambered, but it becomes two chambered due to the formation of what? Another one, that is the false septum. Like we will be seeing most of the example in the mustard plant and argemone plants. And next thing, when the ovules are born on the central axis, like they're born on the central axis, what happens? The septa are absent. As in dianthus or prime rose, what happened? The placenta is called as free central placentation. They are present in the center now. So in basal placentation, that is here what happens, the placenta develops at the base of the ovary. So if it is the ovary, in the base of the ovary, the placenta is developed and a single ovule is attached to it. Okay, as we will be seeing most of them in the sunflower plant and marigold plants, flowers. So this is all about what? Placenta. Coming to the fruit part, the fruit is a characteristic features of the flowering plant. It is matured or ripen ovary. What happens? They develop after fertilization. And if the fruit is removed without fertilization of the ovary, so what we normally call them as? We normally call them as parthenocarpus fruit, right? So what do we call? We normally call them as parthenocarpus fruit. Generally, the fruit consists of walls or pericarp and seeds. Then the pericarp may be dry or fleshy. See, as you can see here, this is the dry, it could be dry or it could be fleshy here. And when the pericarp is thick and fleshy, so it is differentiated into what? Outer epicarp, middle mesocarp, and inner endocarp. Outer epicarp, middle mesocarp, and inner endocarp. And this is the seed, obviously. So example, it could be flesh or dry. So this is if in mango it is flesh and in coconut it is dry. Okay. So in mango and coconut, the fruit is known to be drupe. They develop from the monocarpellary superior ovaries and are one-seeded. In mango, the pericarp is well differentiated into an outer thin epicarp, a middle flesh edible mesocarp, and an inner stony hard endocarp. So in coconut, which is also a derp, that is the mesocarp is fibrous. It is somewhat what? Fibrous, as you can see here. So there are two kinds of we will be seeing in dicotyledons and monocotyledons. Obviously, we will be studying the structure of the seeds in both dicotyledons and monocotyledons. In dicotyledons, what happens? The outermost covering of the seed is actually called as the seed coat. The seed coat has two layers. So the outer layer and the inner layer. So the outer testa and inner what? Tegmen. Okay. So the hilum region, that is this region that what you're seeing is a scar on the seed coat through which the developing seed were attached to the fruit. Okay. So about the hilum, what happens? Above the hilum region, that is to this, above this region, there will be a what? Sorry, above the hilum region to this region, there will be a small opening or a pore called as micropyle region. So this is a micropyle region, which is very small now. So within the seed coat is the embryo. That is within the seed coat, embryo will be present, consisting of an embryonal axis and two cotyledons. Clear? So that is, so it consists of, can you see? So there are two cotyledons here, right? Then cotyledons are often fleshy, full of reserved food material. At the two end of the embryonic axis are present, which is radical, presence of the radical is present. Then plumulus also present. In some seeds, such as custard, the endosperm formed as a result of double fertilization is a food storing tissue and are called as endospermic seed. Okay. In plants such as bee, gram, and pea, the endosperm is not present in matured seed, and such seed are called as non-endospermic seeds. So in monocotyledon seems what happens. It is again different now. So the structure you can see in this figure, right? So what happens generally in monocotyledon seed, the endosperms make, but their seeds are endospermic itself, but some as an orchard are non-endospermic seeds. So in the seeds of cereals such as in maize, the seed coat is membranous. Okay, so seed coat is what? Membranous and generally fused with the fruit wall here. So the endosperm is bulky and acts as a stored food. This is the endosperm region. So endosperm region, what? It is attached to the seed coat or seed wall completely, and it is bulky and acts as a reserve food thing or stores the food. Then the outer covering is actually called as endosperm, separates the covering of the endosperm, separates the embryo by the proteinaceous layer, okay, which is actually called as Polonian layer. So this layer, it separates the endosperm from the outer coat, that is the seed coat, which is actually what? Proteinaceous layer. The embryo is very small. Okay. So as you can see here, the embryo, it is small and situated in the groove. They have been situated in the groove at one end of the endosperm. So if it is endosperm at one end, it has been situated. It consists of one large and shield-shaped coated known as scutellum and a short axis. Okay, can you see this scutellum? It consists of scutellum and a short axis with plumal and radical. So this is the plumal and this is the radical, right? Then the plumal and radical, they are enclosed in sheet which are called as culeoptile, culeoptile and culeos, uh, Coleorhiza, respectively. So that means what happens? In general, this is the structure of the monocotyledon seed. So this was all about the morphology of the flowering plant. So where we had gone through their, respective root system, then shoot, that is the stem, then leaf, different kinds of leaves, and what are its major function, then seed and different types of seeds formation and their morphology was also being studied in this chapter. So till now, with the video, whatever doubts you have, you can feel free to connect with me through the message, or also you can join to our Telegram channel. So make use of the MemoNeet app as it consists of the best notes, and also a number of MCQs are also present. And also for all the previous year questions, you can refer only NTA PYQ book. Thank you, one and all.